Alrighty, so we're gonna go ahead and get started. Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming. And we want to introduce you to our Mental Health Month and our series of events. This is a whole new series that we're going to be going through for this month of October. And so we're really excited for some of the things that we have planned. Just a few little announcements. I am going to share with you guys a little brief overview of the month and the events that we're going to be having. So today is our second general meeting of the semester. Thank you guys for coming. We're going to be having Alyse give a very cool presentation very shortly. Next week, we do have a follow-along workout planned. However, later at the end of the presentation, I am going to ask for some feedback on that, if that's something you guys would be interested in attending. So please stay to the very end to help us out with that. Later in the month, we're going to be giving another short little presentation in regards to exercise and mental health and talking about how exercise can literally be medicine, like our little logo says. And our last event for the month is going to be regarding the 4 realms of wellness and mind muscle meditation, which will feature a very cool special guest from the school. So we're all really excited for that. And I believe I'm not missing anything else. Exec, am I all good there? I believe. Very cool. Alrighty, so I will go ahead and stop sharing this, and I'm going to go ahead and pass the mic to Alyse and take it away.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for that, Alexa. All right, so I am getting ready to share my screen for all of us to see. Give me 1 second. All right, can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
All right, perfect. Let me put you guys over to the side so I can be sure to see it myself as well. All right, so as mentioned, today we'll be getting into a conversation about the effects of prolonged sitting on physical and mental health. So this will be a good segue into our mental health month, and I really hope that this presentation kind of gives you guys insight in regards to some of our current sitting habits and ways to improve them so we can break this habit of prolonged sitting, because this is something that's very common nowadays, especially with the COVID pandemic, but it was even common before the COVID pandemic. It's just that it's been heightened and increased. So let's go ahead and get right into it. So as we dive into it, I want us to really paint the picture here. So what I want us to do with painting this picture is to really get a visual of what it is that we're doing each and every day. So some numbers here. I'm sorry, I actually see a little typo. My apologies, but the average adult actually spend 60% of their waking day seated. Now, this is kind of staggering when you consider it, because another portion of our day, 60% is already a nice portion of our day, but another portion of our day, we actually are lying down when we're asleep. So there's only a small amount of time throughout the day that we actually are moving. And so if 60% of it is seated, we really need to find ways to improve some of our sedentary habits and increase them to get some mobility going. Which brings me to my next point, which is that 4 in 10 adults are physically inactive. So inactive as in period, not doing too much of anything. So we already know ACSM has a recommendation of about 150 minutes of moderate intensity exercise per week. Of course, if you're going to do vigorous, it does switch up a bit. However, we have a small population of people who are physically inactive, and I believe we have a charge as an organization known as Exercise Medicine to kind of create this change that we want to see, not just in ourselves, but in others, because we all have to be accountability partners in a way. So when you consider these two things, these two items together, this is a major contributor to the obesity pandemic. And not only that, when you take the obesity pandemic, combine it with the COVID-19 pandemic, it's just going to make things even more detrimental for us in a way when it comes to our natural health. What I'd like to do next is really talk about us as college students. So we already have sitting as a habit of ours, just naturally when we study, when we're in the classroom, and just in our normal lives and activities, whether it's even commuting and other natural things. But one thing I want to point out is that from a study, they actually show that the amount of time we sit as freshmen all the way up to when we become a senior, it actually increases significantly, as you can see here. So this right here averages to about 6.5 to a little bit more than 6.5 hours per day. Now that's just us sitting as college students. So if you multiply the amount of classes that you take, the amount of time you spend studying, commuting, all these other things, this all just adds on to it. Another important thing I want to note in regards to this too is that when we transition into college, we're now breaking away from those habits that we once had as high schoolers and as middle schoolers, where we had PE. You know, right now, recreational classes are optional. Yes, we could get like a 1-unit course here and there, but it truly is optional. It's not a mandate in California for us to do it as college students. So those habits that we had from PE, from playing volleyball, basketball, or different sports teams that we were on, we might not be on those same teams anymore. So it's really on us to find ways to break these habits, because overall there is a strong correlation between sitting and all health causes of premature mortality. And that's kind of scary. So now that we've painted the picture, let's look at the masterpiece. And unfortunately, this is not the most beautiful masterpiece. As you can see here, there is a number of a number of disorders and diseases that are associated primarily to physical inactivity and sedentary lifestyles. And that is absolutely not okay, right? So as we can see here, together, these factors cause an increased risk to 35 known chronic diseases and disorders. Now, these are only some that are listed. And I know as young people, we always think that, oh, we're, not susceptible to accumulating any of these orders or any of these diseases. But nowadays, age has no number, disease has no number or anything like that. So we see now younger people getting hypertension and diabetes and things along that nature. But the truth of the matter is, it is not, chronic diseases are not inevitable. Like, they're not an inevitable outcome of life, right? It's not mandatory. It's not in our cards that every single person is mandated to have a disease at a young age or even at an older age, because it's a lot of the habits that we instill in ourselves, young and old, that can help lessen and diminish our our potential risk of getting some of these, right? Because we do know that diabetes, although it is hereditary or in people's bloodline and in their gene line and stuff like that, it doesn't necessarily mean that you have to get it. You may be at a higher risk, but it doesn't necessarily mean that it is destined for you if you take the steps that you need to kind of establish a healthier lifestyle. And when I say healthier, just meaning more active, right? So a lot of things do go into it. But as we get into the next slide, I want us to take a little closer look, right? So let's sharpen our lens. So these are the things from the bigger picture, but now let's look at some of the things that we could actually feel, because we might not be able to see cancer. We might not be able to see high blood pressure, right? But there are some things that we can actually see and feel ourselves physically and mentally. So we can see, we can feel musculoskeletal discomfort. So when you think about sitting in a chair after you're in class for so long, you may feel stiff. You may have tightened muscles. You may feel like your back is sore. You might have low back pain. That's something we can actually feel. Same thing with fatigue. When you sit for so long, fatigue does sit in. And so we want to make sure we find ways to break this up to prevent these things from happening. And the beautiful thing about our body is that it lets us know when we need a break. It lets us know when it's time to do something different. The reason why you shift around in your chair to get comfortable is because the previous position you're in became uncomfortable, likely because you were in it for so long. And fatigue also impacts our eyes. So for us as students, we're on the screen in regards to watching a PowerPoint presentation or on Zoom or any of these things that cause us to look at or receive blue light radiation. So we have our cell phones, we have our laptops, we have desktops, we have TV screens. And so our eyes can actually become very fatigued, and they need breaks too. And that's something we could feel. So if you find yourself like rubbing your eye or find yourself being very discomforted in your body, it's your body letting you know, hey, it's time for a break. And the same thing applies when it comes to our mental status. So our cognitive function gets impaired. And so we might not be able to make the best decisions. We might not be able to focus as much. You may notice when you take tests and you're tired, or when you're writing paper, when you're tired, you're just not on your A game. And that's why. Additionally, we may have a suppressed mood, depression, or anxiety that may come over us. I know this is something that I sometimes feel and struggle with when I feel like I have a lot on my plate to do. So I've been sitting at work for a long time, or I've been sitting doing schoolwork for a long time, and I start to feel anxious because there's so much to do, and I feel like maybe so little time, and I might not have the opportunity to get up and actually move and listen to my body and take the breaks that I may need. As a result, anxiety may come over me, or depression may come over me, even if not for a long term, maybe in that moment, because my mind might feel that, oh my goodness, I'm weighed down, I'm boggled with all these things. But really, it might not be as bad as what it feels like in that moment. if I only just took the time to take a break and move around. So with that being said, I want to point out some of the values of a break. So breaks do two things. It either improves something or reduces something, right? And that's a good thing. So when it comes to our actual performance and productivity, it actually improves it. When you are writing a paper and you come across that, what is it, like I hate this word, but like a mental fart, right? Or like a writing block. That's because likely you've been working on it so long, or maybe sitting so long that you kind of lose that judge. But if you notice, if you get up, take a break, walk away from it, people actually encourage that. Step back from the table and come back to it. And it's the reason why, because if you do take that break, it allows your body that natural ability to reset. And there actually have been studies that talked about if you want to improve your writing, or if you want to improve your productivity, actually go and take a walk, because whatever it was that was a mental block that you may have experienced, usually when you start walking, you get to reflect, or you get to shift your mind away from whatever that sentence was that you was trying to work out that just didn't go too well. When you come back, voila, it's there, right? So it improves our performance, productivity, and it also improves our creativity, which is all a good thing. Additionally, our positive well-being is something that's also impacted, which I definitely believe is a pro, because as you get outside, as you move around, and even if you don't go outside, you just have that opportunity to have a little bit more freedom than what you may have when confined behind a desk. Because whenever you're seated, you have the table or the desk pulled up to like your abdomen, right? You're sitting up with the chair, laptops up, you're in this now confined space. Even though you might have all the space you need around you in the library or at home, you're still in this confined space. But it creates a sense of freedom when you have that ability to move around, walk around, stretch, all those good things. So it definitely helps in that manner. And then the additional part is blood circulation. And since many of us are kinesiology majors, we already know the pros of what blood circulation can do as a result of exercise and just movement. So that's something we definitely want to receive a value from. On the opposite end, there are a number of things that it does reduce. So varicose veins and deep vein thrombosis, DVT, is not something that's always talked about, especially for people in our generation. However, one thing I want to point out is that this is a very real scenario that can happen to many of us, and I have to admit that I've actually fallen victim to this. Not DVT, but unfortunately, I do have a varicose vein, and it was something that was very startling and heartbreaking for me for a minute, right? Because we consider varicose veins with old people. So I started thinking about my great grandma who has one or has a couple, and then all of a sudden I have one on my leg. And it kind of woke me up for a minute to see why did I get this? How did I get this? But I realized that I got it during this pandemic time, 2020. I'm working from home, schooling from home, locked down at home, gyms are closed, just people are scared, different things. So instead of being proactive at one point in time and using my environment and making my home my workout space, I succumbed to what it was, transition into work. School never stopped, so then I saw myself sitting at my kitchen table for maybe 16 hours a day. Not cool at all. And varicose veins only takes maybe about 2 to 3 months for one to pop up. So it just let me know, at least you are no longer moving how you used to. And although it's just one, it woke me up. And at first I was super embarrassed about it and stuff like that, just because that older adult association, my great grandma, you know what I mean? I don't want varicose veins at my age, but the thing is, it has nothing to do with age. It has so many other things to do with, but one association with it comes from prolonged sitting. And I preach about this, but I noticed during this past 2020 year, I definitely became victim of it. And I have a little swiggly reminder to tell me. Outside of that, stress, it also reduces muscular tension. So you can get up and you're able to move around, stretch your neck, and decision fatigue. And I really want to talk about this one because this one's interesting to me from a student perspective, and then just overall. So when you're tired and you have that paper that's due at midnight, right? Or you are getting ready to submit a test online and you choose not to reread the paper one more time. And then afterwards, the next day, you go back and reread it and see a couple mistakes that you made. But the decision, you were so tired in that moment that you didn't feel like rereading it. And so now you got 2 points marked off for a couple of things that didn't necessarily need to be marked off, because in that moment you decided, I'm done, I'm tired, I'm over it, submit, right? And so little things like that can impact our schoolwork from decision fatigue because we are tired. But not just that, it impacts people worldwide. So there's a study, and I didn't know the year, but it was something I read a while ago where judges actually in the court of law made decisions in regards to maximizing the sentence for people who are prisoners a lot more often in the latter portion of the day than in the beginning portion of the day. And so it actually became this big thing to where researchers started talking about it. It was like a lawsuit and things like that, to where something that people might have got a slap on the wrist for in the afternoon time, it could be the same case. In the morning, this person got this, but in the evening, this person got this. And why is that? The judge might be under that same thing, decision fatigue. So it is something for us to keep in mind, especially as students, because we don't want to lose small points that could help us in the long run. So let's talk about the essentials of a break. Now, this is something I'm really excited about because I think it's really cool, number one. But this is an acronym I came up with to assist people within the esports realm that I work with. So esports players just are oftentimes students, but just like us, they fall victim to sitting for a long time. So we have students who sit to do homework, like I was talking about. They may be a student assistant, so they're sitting at their office job, and then when they are doing their leisure activities of gaming, they're sitting again. So I was trying to come up with a very creative way to help people remember. So I took it old school, BREAK. So a lot of people don't always know how to take a break. And it's not that there's a right or wrong way to take it. You do what's best for you. However, I do believe doing it in this manner is going to be a lot more beneficial than just literally getting from out the chair in one position and moving to the chair in another position, right? Because sometimes when we take a break, all we do is like get up, say we're at home, we get up, walk to the kitchen, get something in the fridge, and then come back down and sit until it's time for us to come back to class, right? When the teacher tells us to go on a break. Or same thing when we're in the classroom. Sometimes we just go and sit outside. And sitting is not something that we necessarily want to do. We really want to take that time to recoup. So one of the beautiful things about breathing is that it actually autocorrects our posture. So as we take deep breaths in, it forces us to kind of push our shoulders back naturally. So it autocorrects our posture. When I talk about R as in rest, it's not just, like I said, going from one seat to another. It's actually allowing yourself to rest your eyes from screen time, rest your body from being in that same uptight position that a chair placed you in. Doing whatever is best for you, not just slouching, not just laying down, but doing what's going to be best for you. Eating, we all know the benefits and perks about eating and nutrition, and walking around. So we want to ambulate. That's going to allow us to get blood circulation, the promotion of blood circulation, and just a lot of other benefits. And then finally, we want to keep track. And the reason why I say keep track is because we want to do it again. This is something that we want to do frequently and often for our mental health and our physical health. So hopefully this is something y'all can remember as well. Breathe, rest, eat, ambulate, and keep track, because those are the key essentials to a break. All right, so as we wrap up, we just have a few more slides. This is something else I want to introduce to you all, which is the 60-20 rule. So this is another concept I came up with, again, for the esports players that I work with. And it's something I apply to myself as well, because I am a sedentary office employee. And so again, working, schooling, all in a seated position, I have to be accountable of myself in different ways to take breaks, even when I don't want to, or I feel overwhelmed and feel like I can't. So the 60-20 rule is basically this. You take every 60 minutes, you do 6 exercises and 6 stretches for 20 seconds or 20 repetitions, whatever that may be. So over here, we have 6. So we have the dynamic chest stretch, we have side bends, we have toe touches. So my recommendation would be is to hold these for about 20 seconds and go through each one, right? And then same thing when it comes to the exercises. So you can do whatever it is of your choosing. I just have these highlighted here. So high knees, jumping jacks, we can do half jacks, calf raises. It's really up to you if you want to do it in seconds or in repetitions. But when you combine them, the beautiful thing is that it will take only about 5 minutes to do all these. So 20, 40, 60, that equals 1 minute to do 3. Right, and then when you multiply all this, it doesn't quite add up to 5, but when you consider the transitions from each and every one, it's just a 5-minute break that you could do after, if you are doing that A and ambulate. This is a way to actually replace it or do something that'll be beneficial to your body. So with that being said, now that I exposed you guys to some of the different ailments that can occur as a result of prolonged sitting, I would definitely want to provide you all with some recommendations to keep in mind. So one of the very first recommendations I have is to say yes to breaks. And so this is so crucial because, especially in the Zoom environment, we're going from one class to the next. We sometimes are just watching recorded lectures, or we are participating in them live. However, we may not always take a break, even when given it. So we want to say yes to break. If the teacher asks, hey, do y'all want to take a break? I really encourage you to say yes each and every time. I know sometimes we may want to just push through the lecture, or the teacher may say only a few more slides. What do you guys want to do? I know it's so, I know getting home and getting out the class is always something we want to do quickly sometimes, but at the same time, a break is something that our body actually wants us to do quickly, right? Because sometimes our body is telling us, hey, I need a break. If you're restless in your seat, it's for a reason. And one thing I want to note is that when it comes to breaks, it's going to help you rejuvenate your body for when it comes time to come back to class, reset and refocus. So keep that in mind. Another thing is keep track. So we talked about this in the acronym, BREAK. But with this, I also want to add on another like little teaser, which is AAA. So AAA, not in like the car insurance or anything like that, but AAA as in apps, alarms, and Alexa, right? AAA. These things are going to be your friends because they all allow you an opportunity to set reminders. So you don't have to keep track up here. We already have so much knowledge that we're trying to retain. So you don't have to worry about the time. You don't have to worry about the hour. Allow an app, an alarm, or Alexa to let you know. It's just that easy, okay? And then lastly on this, I recommend this statement right here. The world is our classroom. We don't necessarily have to be confined to just one single seat. We don't have to be confined to the library. We don't have to be confined to our kitchen table. We don't have to be confined to our bedroom, right? The world is literally our classroom. So I encourage you all to find different areas in which you can move to study, to read. This is something that I did during the pandemic, and this is something that I still am trying to do and implement into my life now, realizing that I don't have to be confined to one space because the world is my classroom. And if I think about it like that, it's going to get me excited to move and go and find my next study spot, whether it's Starbucks hopping, whether it's, location hopping in the library, whatever the case may be, it doesn't matter, but just kind of keep this in mind. And I have a few examples on the next slide, which will show you some other creative means that I want to refer to. However, before I move to that slide, this hashtag right here is something I'm really hoping that we can implement as an organization. So EIMOC, so Exercise is Medicine on Campus _ office for the day. So I really wanted to kind of start thinking about what can be my office for the day. And when you think of one, I would love if you would take a picture of yourself and tag us as EIMOC to show us where you decided to study for the day or where you decided to actually post up and read for the day, right? Because there's different ways that you can be creative, and I think we can get fun with it. So with that being said, I have this slide here. So as you can see, this one in this top corner, it's kind of funny to me, moving up in life, my new standing desk. So this is awesome. I love a good bootleg, right? I love when people get creative. So the thing is that we're able to turn certain office spaces into standing spaces. We don't always have to be in a seated position. So this ironing board can easily be something that you work on. You can have like your little notepad to the side. If you have like a wireless mouse, you can add one there. And this can literally become your office for the day, whether it's in your living room, whether it's in your bedroom, whatever the case may be. But it gets you out and away from the dining room table. It gets you out and away from the desk, right? And allows you an opportunity to be mobile and move around. Additionally, the beach. This is something that I actually did during the pandemic. So I actually have a MiFi that I was able to get from the Student Affairs, the Office of Student Affairs on campus. So if you do not have a MiFi, I definitely encourage you to check it out through our Hotspot Learner program, because this was a blessing to me then, and it is still a blessing to me now. I'm literally able to have internet anywhere I go. And it's an amazing thing because a number of times I went to the beach and got work done. And so even though I went to the beach and got work done, I wasn't necessarily in the sand like this, but I definitely do have this as a recommendation, but I actually sat in my car. And so I drove there, I sat in my car, but the cool thing was that I only put an hour on the meter. So I knew that would force me to get up and get out. And then every time I looked to the right, I had the window of the beach to the right of me. And that encouraged me to want to walk around, to actually feel, to smell, to get slapped in the face a little bit with the beach air and wind. And I saw other people moving. So it was something that motivated me to want to do the same thing. So this is something that we can do. We don't necessarily have to stay cooped up indoors. This is a picture from actually on campus. It doesn't matter where you are. You could literally make anything your classroom for reading, for studying, for just chillaxing. This bottom picture here, this is actually my kitchen. So if anybody has class with me, they may see me move around periodically. I try to do it like once every class, especially on Zoom. because for graduate school classes, they are very long. So they are 2.5 hours, and our teachers love to teach, and I do love to learn, but I also love to get up every once now and again because I do feel the implications on my body. My back tells me, like, we're getting stiff here. We got to do something. So this is my own little bootleg version of a stand-up area. So I'm blessed to live with a baker. And so basically what I've done, I take our sugar canisters. And so I have set my laptop on top of this. The counter is already about waist height for me. Now my laptop doesn't come to eye level, but it's good enough for me for my height and the ratio in my kitchen. But this allows me to move from my kitchen table, which is my office and Zoom classes, to move to my kitchen counter, to have that opportunity to move around. And another thing I encourage is if you do work from home or schooling from home, I want to encourage you to have like a swivel chair and that you can move around in. But this is also going to promote just small little moments of mobility. But there's different ways that we could get creative. I also encourage, if you live in an apartment, or if you have a pool in your backyard, or even if you have a backyard or balcony, go outside, allow the sunshine to hit your face, get vitamin D. There are so many perks and benefits of being outdoors. And if you allow yourself to be in an environment, it gives you a great mental respite, a great mental break, and it gives you an opportunity to feel the sun, to feel the air, to feel, in a sense, alive. Even though you may have these daunting tasks of midterms or exams or whatnot, sometimes the joy of the world, in the sense of like sunshine, blue skies and stuff like that, could just be a natural high for us. So that's something that could also help us protect and upkeep our mental health. And the last picture I want to point out is actually from our student union. So these are actually high tables, and I see everybody sitting, but what I would encourage is if anybody was to pop a squat at these tables, is to consider standing, right? So the thing is that by standing, you give yourself a break from that hour and a half you just sat in class. So let's try to break the social norms. Sometimes people might feel like it feels weird or looks weird, but at the end of the day, it's not. We're literally just standing. There is nothing weird about standing. Now, you may feel like you're standing out in the crowd, no pun intended, but there's good reason behind it. And hopefully it becomes a trend that we begin to do and see changes with on campus, just opportunities for us to have different and adaptive workspaces. So as we get into that, or wrap up on that, I want to just have another recommendation. In this recommendation, just as I gave for students, I have one for university professors, TAs, and administrators, because you never know who is watching, right? But this is something that I would encourage for them, and I'll also encourage us as members of this organization to take charge of and push our administration, our teachers, our TAs to help advocate for us. And that's a few things. The first one is breaking the social norm. So this kind of piggybacks off of what I was saying before, right? With the social norm of of sitting. We're raised to sit in a classroom from kindergarten on up. Take your seat. First you take your seat Indian style on the floor. Then you upgrade a little bit, and then you take a seat at the little table, and then you get the big desk and so forth. But everything that we know is in a sitting environment. And then, that becomes the norm for us. And so let's try to break that social norm that we have to sit to learn, or we have to sit in order to behave, because behavior is something I was associated with when we were younger, right? If you're sitting still, you're being good. We're adults now. It doesn't mean that we have to be sitting still means being good nowadays, but sitting still seems still the social norm was normalized, and let's try to break that. And so I'd encourage teachers and other administrators to just allow us the opportunity and help us foster the opportunity to create change and encourage class breaks. And I would have that be done both physically and visually. So teachers encourage students to get up and move around. Students encourage teachers to have you get up and move around and to take breaks, because it's going to be a win-win for everyone. And one thing I've noticed is that if a teacher is asking us, hey, do you guys want a break? It's either A, because they're ready for one, or B, they see that we need one, right? They see us just as we see them. So they may see a class of 25 students, looking tapped out, looking bored. They're probably dropping a dime. So let's go ahead and pick it up, put it in our pocket, and then get to stepping, meaning like outside the classroom to move around. So in addition to that, I would like to encourage them to advocate for change for us. But before I even get into that, I want to point this out real quick, because I do have this asterisk here, and it's just a note. So this is a study that actually kind of helps summarize these 2 bullet points that I have. And in this study, one thing that they notice is that it only takes about 75 minutes, or one thing that was pointed out is that it only takes about 75 minutes for the body of a student to become uncomfortable, right? So when we think about our class, 75 minutes is only an hour and 15 minutes. Most classes, especially for graduate students, are always beyond that. So if we're starting to have class, or if we're starting to have a meeting that lasts beyond that point, odds are people are starting to get uncomfortable, you know? So we want to find ways to kind of help break that narrative. In addition to that, in the study, they also pointed out that it only takes about 15 minutes to get sleepy. So if you sit still long enough, if somebody is rambling like myself right now, and it's not something that might be engaging to you, it might cause you to be a little bit more sleepy, or it might cause you to tap out. Because again, we talk about fatigue. Fatigue comes in the mental form and the physical form. And so because of that, the next best thing, the remedy to fatigue is a good old nap. And if we're sitting there, we might feel that very way, sleepy. So that's something to consider. But I did point this here. I did note this here in case anybody ever wants to reference it. But it's a pretty cool article, and it does summarize almost everything that I have noted here. But moving on, advocating for change. So I would encourage us, and again, university professors, TAs, and administrators to advocate for change for us, and for us to be the change that we want to see. So even within our library, and even within our campus community, in our library, there are not a lot of places for us to stand. Everything is a seat. We're looking for a seat every time we walk into the library. If we're doing a group project, where do you guys want to sit? You know, what table is the best table, you know, to sit at ultimately? But we want to find ways to where we can stand in different places. So if there is something like one-time money available, if there is something like grants available, taking that opportunity and spending that money on maybe sit-stand desks to incorporate throughout the library, or static stand desks to incorporate in the library or our student union. So that way it promotes and encourages opportunities for people to actually stand instead of taking a seat. So then we could start reaping some of the benefits that we talked about earlier from a break and from actually mobility. And we all know that, you know, standing always burns a little more energy and a few more calories than just the energy that it requires to stay seated when it comes to meds and different things along that nature. And then lastly, classes where the students are, the beach, right? So we have our lovely, beautiful campus, and that is our classroom. The entire university is our classroom. So when it comes to taking a meeting with a teacher or a teacher with a student, know that it doesn't always have to be in the office, or know that it doesn't have to always be in the classroom. Walking meetings are always great. In addition to that, we have the opportunity to maybe switch things up. See if a teacher could actually host class outside. We have the Japanese garden on campus. We have in the kinesiology building, that little outside area where there's a number of like cemented tables. And it's not a lot of people in those areas at times. And so because of that, that might be a great place to have class. You know, it might be a few distractions with other people walking around, but at the same time, it might be something different. It might be appreciated because we have an opportunity to, you know, again, feel the sunshine, feel the breeze, have a different environment, change the scenery. And it also encourages movement and granting that flexibility to stand versus sit all the time, or just kind of move around. So these are just some things that I have as recommendations. And these really apply to all of us. Although it says recommendations for university professors, TAs, and administrators, we all are accountable for each other, because ultimately we only have one body. We want to do what we can to take care of it mentally and physically. And as we know, exercise truly is medicine, and any movement and every movement truly does count. So that being said, I'm getting ready to close my presentation. I just want to remind you all that mobility is truly, truly a gift. So let's learn to appreciate it. Let's learn to love our bodies, and let's learn to really take care of it, right? Because, you know, it's that joke that, you know, maybe our aunties and uncles and, you know, grandparents say like, oh, I can't move like I used to, or oh, I can't get up that fast, or I need help getting up. We don't want to get to that point, especially in our youth, right? So being that 4 in 10 people are inactive, it doesn't mean that, you know, people in their 20s don't fall into that same number. So we want to make sure that we're using the gift that we do have, which is our legs, which is our limbs, and just really aiding to the things that are going to be good for us, mind, body, and soul. And movement is exactly that. And so I encourage you all to move around, especially following this. Keep in mind the 60-20 rule, and just kind of keep in mind that a break is essential. And once you take a break, it's going to be the best thing for you to do physically and mentally. So with that being said, thank you all very much. I do have my references here if anybody wants to check them out. This video will be recorded. So if you want to go back and reference it, you can always do so. And then lastly, that actually concludes my presentation. So I hope you all enjoyed it. I hope it didn't feel too much like a ramble, but actually something informative and cool with the statistics and numbers and stuff like that. But I'm going to stop sharing my screen. And if anybody has questions, we could definitely discuss them. And I see a few things in the chat, so we'll get to those too, just in case.
So thank you for that. That was really cool. I feel like the timing of this is like, I know we planned it, but it also feels like oddly right. You know, like there's midterms coming, and I remember even just yesterday I was studying for Kin 430, the Kin 430 exam, and I'm sitting there and you study for so many hours at a time that eventually you get to this like frustration point where like things just don't make sense, and like you're like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. Like I don't want to try and compute this. So I have to get up. I have to go walk my dog. I gotta go take a walk in the backyard and do something. And then you come back and you come with like a whole fresh new mindset, and you're like, oh, I knew that. Why didn't I know that earlier, like an hour ago or something like that, right? So It's really interesting.
Definitely. And that's the thing. I actually was guilty of the same thing not so long ago. Matter of fact, this week, I was sadly up to like 3 in the morning working on something. And it took me a lot longer than what it should have to complete the task. And then I woke up the next morning after 3 hours of sleep and was like, what did I even get done? Because when I went back and looked, it wasn't like I was really prosperous. I was up a long time, but when I looked at what I had, it wasn't that it wasn't good. It's just that I should have got so much more accomplished in the time frame that I had set out. But it let me know I've been sitting there forever. You know, I'm not going to be as productive. I'm not going to be as creative. I'm not going to be as sharp, you know? So if I would have just listened to my body, which told me to get my butt in bed, you know what I mean? Or to take a break, maybe it wouldn't have been, you know, so many hours of lost sleep, lost time, and actually extra work. You know, a lazy man works twice, and you know, you don't want to be that person. And even though I was trying not to be lazy, I wanted to have me work twice anyway. But I do see some questions in the chat. And Alexa, if you see anything that you want to point out to me, because I got to start all the way from the top, feel free to chime in, and I don't mind addressing anything. So I can kind of see where the first chat started.
I have a quick question.
Yeah,
this is regarding to like the people, the esports athletes you work with. Like since you've implemented those like breaks and stuff, have you seen like improvements in like their performance and stuff?
Actually, yeah. It took a little bit of convincing. It wasn't really hard to convince them once I kind of like painted the picture for them in a way, just kind of how like, I mean, I didn't say it like that to them. I did it more so for this presentation, but in a sense, after I painted the picture for them to see why, that was one of the biggest questions, like, Alyse, how can exercise help my game? You know, yeah, I'm a gamer, but it was that idea of convincing them and helping them also realize, because it's that argument, are esports players athletes? You know, and my stance on it is that they are. You know, I respect their game, I respect their hustle and their dedication, but at the end of the day, they are putting in work just like any other athlete to perfect their craft, and their body is feeling the implications of it. But once I start to break down things to them, they started to pick up what I was throwing down, and they do see changes in their performance. And they actually, it makes me really proud, but they actually say like, hey guys, it's time for a break. You know, we're messing up in the game, or we're making like crucial mistakes. And they now associate those mistakes to being tired and restless. And so I love it. It's really great. So I would say, yeah, it does.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
The other question we have is, are standing desks actually a good alternative for posture and blood flow wise?
So I would say it's not so much a loaded question, but it's kind of like a yes and no question. So the answer to prolonged sitting isn't prolonged standing. You know, we want to have that like healthy balance. So as it being something that could like promote blood flow, the answer is yes, because you're always going to be adjusting your posture. Think about if you are an employee who works at, I don't know, a job like Starbucks or something that requires you to be on your feet. Your feet start to hurt, or even if you have to stand still and you're a cashier, that's a perfect example. If you're a cashier, you're standing in one position. After so long, you're going to be shifting from weight from side to side to side. So when you have this standing desk, it is going to promote blood flow in a way, because you're going to be circulating your limbs a little bit more, or excuse me, a lot more than what you would when you're just sitting down in one boring position. You know what I mean? There's only so much movement you can do in a chair. So I would say, yes, it does, but I would not say that a static stand desk is the answer to low back pain, or to prolonged sitting, or to musculoskeletal disorders or discomfort. You have to find that happy medium, because the body does want to rest. And I'm not hating on sitting, You know, everybody loves a good seat, you know, and as Americans, we find ways to get the best seat ever. You know, esports players are looking for the most comfortable and most coolest chair. Office workers are looking for the most ergonomical chair, you know, but the one downfall of having such a comfortable chair is that it's going to cause us to sit there longer, you know? So I do support sit stand desks because you get the best of both worlds. And I also encourage what's it called? An anti-fatigue mat, that's the name. Anti-fatigue mat to have underneath your standing desk or your sit stand desk.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's another question. So I work at Aldi's, a grocery store, and they provide chairs at the registers so we can be seated. But like you mentioned, my body does tell me when it wants me to stand up, and I'm definitely going to implement that when I'm at work. Yeah, I think Aldi's is one of the few places, if any, that do that. I remember the first time I saw it, I was like, interesting.
You know what? I haven't been in Aldi's yet, but it's been on my like to-do list to do. There's like two not too far from me, but I respect that. And I also respect Costco. Costco, I've noticed their receipt checker offer people. I don't mean to call them that. I just don't know the names. Maybe you guys get to know who I'm talking about. But those who sign or highlight, they actually have in some anti-fatigue mats. Sometimes they're known as resistance too, but they have anti-fatigue mats. And when I saw that, I got really excited. So excited I wanted to say something to the girl because I seen her feet like moving around on it, but I was like, don't be weird, Alyse. Just appreciate the moment and keep it pushing. But I was very happy to see, you know, an industry store like Costco loving on their employees in even what may seem like a subtle way like that.
That's really interesting. I think there's sometimes, I think some places will have, for those people like you're talking about, they'll have like little stools by.
Mm-hmm.
And there's like two types of people. There's the person that is always in the stool, or the person who is always standing around walking and doing what they're supposed to do. So is there any other questions, comments for Alyse, or any thank yous? Because that was a really great presentation. Even for it being rather brief, I know you're doing a lot more work behind on this subject, but for what you were to give us, I mean, thank you. We really do appreciate it.
And I'm definitely interested in. So if anybody ever has like questions within exercises medicine or outside of it, it is something I take an interest in because I'm guilty of it. I have been guilty of it. Like I said, I told you my testimony in a sense with like my brief moment of embarrassment with like a varicose vein. And I even had to kind of like consider that when speaking to you guys about it, just because of that association. But again, it's like a birthmark in a sense that reminds me of what I did in life, you know what I mean, which is not move. So yeah, but if anybody ever asks questions now or later, I'm open to the conversation for sure.
Very cool. So with that being said, that pretty much concludes our second general meeting, kicking off the month of mental health for October. So thank you guys so much for coming. This will be uploaded if you wish to see it again, if you want to look at Alyse's sources. Those will always be up for you guys to look into. Other than that, if there's no other questions, comments, and concerns, you guys are free to go for the day. And thank you guys again so much for coming. We really do appreciate it.
Alyse, I got a bonus question.
All right.
With your experience or background with esports,
Mm-hmm.
Ninja really that good?
I think so.
Okay, I was just curious. Yeah.
It's a very good question, though. There's substance to it, really. And one thing I do want to ask, actually, really quick, thank you for reminding me. For the people that are here, I did mention that we were having a follow-along workout plan for next week. And feel free to be completely honest with me here. You do not have to feel obligated to say yes. If that is something that you guys would be interested in, unfortunately, it would be held via Zoom due to rules, regulations, and stuff like that. So if that is something you would be interesting, give a little reaction emote. If not, do not feel obligated to say anything. No's are okay, yeses are okay. But if not, then again, our general meeting is coming to an end. And thank you guys so much again for coming.